Lots to cover this morning, and really glad to have you with me. We're going to cover such an important piece of work. Specifically, niche selection is the main focus for this morning. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the puzzle hangs together, but then we're actually going to work through the workbook together. So hopefully you've got that copy, and don't worry about printing it out, because I'm actually going to get you to complete the document online, soft copy, get the work done, and ideally by the end of this session, if you already know right now some of the target groups, target customers that you're going to go after, by the end of today's session I want you to be very confident that those are the right decisions, those are the right groups to go after. And if at this point you're not yet clear on exactly which clusters of customers or prospects to focus your energies on, by the end of this session you will have 3 distinct groups selected and ready for you to pursue, and 3 more in the parking lot is how we refer to it. So that's an additional 3 that you have in the parking lot, and if one of the original 3 doesn't quite work out the way you want it to, you can resort to one of the additional 3. But ideally I'm going to recommend that you focus your energy and attention on only 3 core niche segments. So, how to focus your marketing efforts on the narrow groups that will bring you the best results. Niche selection. I had a good look across a number of dictionaries for a definition of niche, and here's the simplest one, the easiest one. It's just a narrow market segment. So the key analogy that's so easy to understand is if you're going fishing, and you want to go out there and get a particular fish, well, there's a couple of options. If you have a huge amount of resources at your disposal, then you can just cast an enormous net out there in the sea that's about 2 miles wide. You can catch all kinds of things, shark, coral, rusty old boot, and of course casting that enormous net costs a huge amount of money. And not only does it cost a lot of money to do that, it then costs a lot of money to sift through everything that you catch in the net to work out, which are the shark bits, which are the rusty old boots, and then which are the actual fish that you're trying to catch. So my recommendation is, if you don't have $500,000 or more in your marketing budget, don't take the big trawling net approach. Rather work out exactly which kind of fish you're trying to catch, and once you're very clear on that, it'll be much easier for you to know what kind of bait do you need to put on the end of your hooks, and exactly where do you need to go fishing. Very clear analogy, exactly the same applies in business. So here's some food for thought for you. In order to get more leads, and I actually want you to answer these questions in your mind. As I pose the question on the screen, I want you to actually think about it, and I want you to actually answer the question. In order to get more leads, which is the very best LinkedIn group to join? Just give that some thought. To get more leads, which is the best LinkedIn group to join? And now some of you might be answering, you might actually be suggesting specific groups in your head, but here's the correct answer. It depends who you're going after. It depends exactly who you're going after. If you're going after marketing managers, you've got to join a marketing managers group. If you're going after human resource directors, you've got to join an HR directors group. So here's another question for you. If you want to get the most leads, which associations should you join? Which associations should you investigate? Once again, it depends. Who are you going after? Which fish are you trying to focus on? Have a look at each one of these questions. Which is the best forum to deliver an education session or a presentation? If you're going to go and talk at someone else's forum, which one would be the best ones to target? What about which word or phrase would you use for search engine optimization purposes? So you want to do search engine optimization, what words or phrases you got to put in? Again, that's going to come down to exactly who are you going after, what are their problems, what words do they use to describe the problem. What about the best ways to word your blog? What are some of the best challenges or topics to talk about in your blog that would attract lots of people, lots of potential customers? It all comes back down to the question, exactly who are you trying to target? What's the best education paper to write? If you're going to write a piece of education, if you're going to write 5 points on how to solve a specific problem. What's the best way to write that paper, or exactly which problem should you address? Well, it's going to come back to the key question of who exactly are you going after? So hopefully by now the pattern's starting to emerge. We're starting to see how important it is as step one to become really clear on which group or groups of businesses or people are we specifically targeting. Title to choose for the book which you are going to write. What's the best title? Depends on which audience you're trying to address. Finally, what's the best problem to tackle in a video education series if you're going to publish that to grow your community? Depends on who you're trying to attract. So here's a bit of inspiration for you. Before I flick up the book, a question I got for you is, do you know who the guy on the left is? You've met the guy on the right. You may have seen him on Australia's Most Wanted on television. But the guy on the left, who is he? I'm going to give you a clue right here. Most of you have probably seen this book, seen the book cover, even if you haven't read the book. I'm going to share a few facts with you, and hopefully this will really inspire you as to the magic that you can perform if you become very clear on exactly who you're targeting. The guy on the left's name is Darren Stephens, and he's a really nice guy, one of the most humble guys you'll meet. He's Melbourne born and raised. He didn't actually finish school. He just became so passionate about his dreams and what he thought was possible that he dropped out of school. I can't remember if it was in year 11 or year 12, somewhere around there. And this guy is pretty much the marketing brains behind the whole Venus-Mars series. So he partnered with John Gray. John Gray is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And through his marketing creativity, they took this book, in fact the series, on to become the best-selling series. In fact, in the 90s, the Venus-Mars series was only outsold by the Bible. Think about that. So is this guy worth 60 million, 90 million, 100 million? I got no idea. It's some huge figure like that. And he's just one of the most amazingly humble guys considering all his achievements today. He's spending time now showing people how to publish books. He's got 28 bestsellers to his name. But I want to talk to you about one specific bestseller where there was a particular guy who had pulled together a book. And in the book, he had all kinds of photographs of some of the best golf courses in Australia. And his first book that he had published was not very successful. So he had chatted with his wife and he wanted to double mortgage the house and do all kinds of things because he thought if he could just have another crack and take different angles of the golf courses, and he was really ready to make another big investment and trying to get his family's permission to do that. And it was at that time that he caught up with Darren. And Darren asked him such an important question. He asked him, who's your target market? And this guy wasn't really clear around who was going to buy his book. So initially, this guy came up with an idea that the book could be sold to all the people who want to design golf courses in Australia. Well, cool. That's a pretty defined niche. But how many people do we know? How many people could we possibly find that really want to design golf courses? I'm sure there'd be a very limited number of those such people. So even if all the people who design golf courses bought the book, it still wouldn't be a bestseller. Darren questioned this guy, he probed this guy, and Darren came up with an idea. The idea that he came up with was this. Why don't they target all the people in Australia who have ever scored a hole-in-one? And Darren's idea was, don't go out and take a whole bunch of additional photos. Your first lot of photos in the first book, these pictures are actually really quite good. But for the second book, why don't we get a list of all the people who have got a hole-in-one in golf? And of course, all those people are trackable and traceable, because if you want to be known that you scored a hole-in-one, there are a few rules that apply. You have to be on the course with someone else. You have to register it with the club within a certain number of hours of finishing a game of golf. And so basically, all the golf clubs have got lists of people who've scored a hole-in-one. These guys worked out that there are 80,000 such people in the country. And what they did was they published a second edition of the original book. But in the second edition, they had a list of the names of all the people who had scored a hole-in-one. Now, I don't know if you all know, but in Australia, a book is a bestseller if it sells 5,000 copies. Darren mentioned that the hit rate, the sales rate was actually quite high. I don't remember the exact number, but even if only half the people bought one book, that's 40,000 copies of a book, which, by the way, were pre-ordered before the book was even printed. So think about that. Imagine selling 40,000 copies of a book. The price was $100, which included the book and a certificate saying you're part of the Hole-in-One Club. But that's not where the creativity ended. Once that was an amazing success, they decided to, because there was a logo on the book, there was some branding. So they then sold all of the hole-in-oneers the Hole-in-One Club cap. Imagine selling the cap for $40 and getting it produced for about $3 or $5. You don't need to be a mathematician to start working out that on these kinds of numbers, they could possibly be turning about $500,000 every time they come up with a new item, from the cap to the shorts to the t-shirt to the socks to the golf balls with the logo, etc. So have a look at what happened here with an original idea, one set of photographs in a book, and someone who came along and really got the niching right. Hopefully that story really inspires you, and just think about what's possible if you really aim the darts that you're going to throw and say exactly where the target is, exactly which specific groups you want to go after.